Welcome to This Month in Type 1 Research. Please check the description for the original sources, and all content is general in nature and should not be considered medical advice. So imagine managing your diabetes for like 10 years.
Right, a whole decade.
Yeah, a decade. You're taking the pills, severely restricting your diet, and still watching your blood sugar just totally spiral out of control.
Which is incredibly frustrating.
Oh, it's a nightmare. You feel like an absolute failure because nothing seems to work, only to find out years later that your doctor gave you the completely wrong diagnosis simply because you're considered, too old to have type 1.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
That nightmare scenario is currently happening to over half of newly diagnosed patients today.
It really is. The assumption that type 1 is exclusively a pediatric disease is, well, it's one of the most pervasive biases in modern endocrinology.
And damaging, right?
Highly damaging. When we synthesize this massive stack of May 2026 research papers, the data unequivocally shows that adult-onset type 1 diabetes is not an outlier. It is actually the majority.
Wow. And that is the mission for our deep dive today. We are sifting through this mountain of new data for you, the listener.
There's a lot to cover.
There is. We are extracting the most fascinating insights, spanning from the sheer shock of adult misdiagnosis all the way to cutting-edge AI technologies, immunotherapies, and stem cell innovations.
It's a rapidly evolving field.
We are looking at a diagnostic and therapeutic landscape that is moving at just a staggering pace. So let's get into it.
To understand the trajectory of where this care is going, we have to look closely at why we are failing to find these patients accurately in the first place.
Right.
When an adult walks into a clinic with elevated glucose, the default clinical pathway almost automatically points to type 2.
Because providers are expecting that classic rapid onset presentation we see in children, right?
Exactly. But adult onset autoimmune diabetes usually involves a much slower, simmering destruction of the beta cells.
Okay, let's unpack this. These patients often maintain a prolonged honeymoon phase where they are still producing some endogenous insulin.
Right, which perfectly mimics the insulin resistance we associate with type 2.
It's like a mechanic trying to fix a diesel engine using a manual for an unleaded car. The tools just won't work. And if you keep throwing metformin at an autoimmune attack, you're going to, ruin the engine.
That's a great way to put it. The clinical guidelines from these new papers emphasize that providers need to look past age. They need to focus on the physiological presentation.
So what are the clues they should be looking for?
Well, if a patient lacks classic metabolic syndrome features, they do not have central adiposity, their triglycerides are normal, their blood pressure is fine, those are big hints.
And if they have a remarkably poor response to non-insulin type 2 medications.
Yes, those are glaring red flags. This raises an important question about how we fundamentally approach diagnosis in the clinic.
That means we have to stop guessing and start looking for the immunological fingerprints.
Precisely. The guidelines push for immediate autoantibody testing to detect the autoimmune attack.
And C-peptide testing to measure endogenous insulin production.
Right. Exactly. But what's really compelling is the push to find this even earlier, before the pancreas is completely destroyed.
Yeah, that caught my eye too. The sources highlight the Uniscreen population study.
Uniscreen is fascinating.
It is. They're testing the feasibility of mass screening across all ages using just a tiny minimal volume capillary blood prick.
Identifying the presence of autoantibodies during stage 1 or stage 2 T1D, long before clinical symptoms appear, would radically shift the healthcare landscape.
Because the immediate goal of Uniscreen is preventing severe diabetic ketoacidosis at onset.
Exactly. By catching the autoimmune markers early, we prevent patients from landing in the ICU with life-threatening blood acidity.
Which is huge.
Huh?
But researchers are also hunting for preclinical biomarkers that appear even before the autoantibodies, right?
Yes, they are. The papers specifically called out fasting plasma uridine dynamics and Siglec-15.
I was actually looking at Siglec-15. It appears to act as an immune checkpoint molecule.
Right, it regulates the immune response.
It functions almost like the brakes on a car, preventing the immune system from overreacting.
So are researchers looking to see if those brakes are failing early in T1D?
That is the prevailing hypothesis, yeah. In healthy individuals, Siglec-15 suppresses errant immune responses.
But in new onset, T1D.
The data shows severe dysregulation of this molecule. The braking mechanism fails, which allows autoreactive T cells to proliferate unchecked.
And then there is uridine, which is a pyrimidine nucleoside.
Right, a basic building block of cellular metabolism.
So why would a metabolic building block shift before blood sugar even starts to rise? That seems counterintuitive.
Well, because the beta cells are experiencing profound metabolic stress well before they actually die.
Oh, I see.
As the immune system begins its initial infiltration, the beta cells try to upregulate their cellular defense mechanisms.
That requires energy.
Exactly. It requires burning through local metabolites. Longitudinal studies show dramatic shifts in plasma uridine levels.
Which reflects this localized stress in the pancreas. Yes, long before enough beta cells are destroyed to actually impact glucose levels.
Spotting those shifts gives us a vital head start. Once we find those markers, the immediate next step is trying to halt the progression, right?
We have to stop the immune system from destroying whatever beta cells are left.
But looking at the recent immunotherapy trials, it is clearly a brutal fight.
It's very difficult.
The F1 RADA trial is a perfect example of a profound disappointment. The hypothesis was that giving children with stage 1 T1D high doses of oral insulin could induce mucosal tolerance.
Right. The gut is incredibly adept at distinguishing between harmless food and dangerous pathogens.
So they were trying to train the gut.
Exactly. The idea behind mucosal tolerance is to introduce an antigen, in this case, insulin, through the digestive tract.
Essentially training the gut's immune system to recognize it as a harmless nutrient.
Yes, thereby calling off the systemic autoimmune attack on the pancreas.
But the data showed 1 year of high-dose oral insulin didn't alter the disease progression or the immune response at all.
Unfortunately, no, it didn't.
I have to push back on the premise of that trial, though. If it totally failed, does that mean researchers were barking up the wrong tree entirely?
It's a fair question.
Or is the immune memory in T1D just too entrenched for a simple decoy approach?
It's more the latter. The immune system's attack on beta cells is highly coordinated and deeply entrenched by the time autoantibodies appear.
So the immune system has already made up its mind.
Pretty much. Mere antigen exposure in the gut is not enough to reverse the programming of a mature autoreactive T cell.
That makes sense.
To halt the progression, you cannot just offer a decoy. You have to actively intervene in the cellular communication network. You need highly targeted immunomodulation.
Which brings us to the successes. The real-world data from the Barbara Davis Center on teplizumab is incredibly promising.
It's very exciting data.
It is successfully reproducing the clinical trial results, delaying the progression from stage 2 to stage 3 T1D.
Right. Teplizumab is an anti-CD3 monoclonal antibody. It binds directly to the CD3 receptor on the surface of T cells.
And what does that actually do?
By doing this, it partially exhausts the active frontline soldiers, the aggressive T cells orchestrating the attack,
Wow.
while simultaneously promoting the expansion of regulatory T cells, which helps suppress the immune response.
So you are directly neutralizing the attackers.
Yes.
But there is another drug in the pipeline, frexalimab, currently in the Fabulinus phase 2 trial for adolescents and adults with recent onset stage 3 T1D.
Right, a very different mechanism.
Yeah, this is a CD40L antagonist. How does interrupting that pathway differ from what teplizumab is doing?
Well, if teplizumab is exhausting the frontline soldiers, frexalimab is jamming the radio communications between the generals and the troops.
Oh, I like that analogy.
The immune system relies on antigen-presenting cells, the generals, to show a target to the T cells and give them the go signal to attack.
And that signal requires a specific pathway.
Yes, that go signal requires a co-stimulatory pathway involving CD40 and its ligand CD40L.
Okay.
By antagonizing CD40L, frexalimab physically blocks that secondary signal.
So the T cell sees the target, but doesn't attack.
Exactly. The T cell might see the beta cell, but without the co-stimulation, it remains inactive. The hope is that this can preserve whatever beta cell function is left at the time of clinical diagnosis.
All of this immunotherapy is incredible, but it forces us to confront a difficult reality.
It does.
What happens if we find the disease too late? If the beta cells are already obliterated, exhausting the T cells or jamming their radios won't bring the pancreas back.
Unfortunately, no. Once they're gone, they're gone.
That leads us to the ultimate backup plan, replacing the cells entirely with stem cell-derived islets, or SC islets. Here's where it gets really interesting.
It's the frontier of the research. The progress in stem cell therapy is achieving what we can finally call a functional cure in early clinical trials.
That's amazing to even hear those words.
By transplanting these laboratory-grown SC islets into a patient, we are seeing a reversal of hyperglycemia. We are completely eliminating the need for exogenous insulin injections in some trial participants.
But you can put the new cells in, and the patient still has an autoimmune disease, right?
Exactly. The underlying issue remains.
The body's immune system is still patrolling. I think of this biomaterial-based encapsulation like putting the new stem cells into a biological witness protection program.
That's an excellent way to conceptualize it.
You have to give them a new identity and build a physical safe house around them so the
Yeah.
immune system can't assassinate them.
And just like a real safe house, this biomaterial gel has to have heavily guarded doors.
How do they do that?
The pores of the encapsulation material are meticulously engineered to be just large enough to let oxygen in and insulin out.
But too small for the immune system.
Yes, physically too small for the body's macrophage and T-cell assassins to enter.
Brilliant.
But hiding them from the immune system only solves half the problem. The cells face another immediate lethal threat upon transplantation, which is profound hypoxia.
Because before new blood vessels can grow to support the transplant, the stem cells basically suffocate.
Precisely. This is where the engineering of the microenvironment becomes critical.
The sources highlight a delivery system known as DSAV FOXO1. Let's break that down because the mechanics are just fascinating.
Let's do it.
DAS stands for Deep Eutectic Solvent, which is a freely advanced liquid that stabilizes biological structures.
Right. And AAV is an adeno-associated virus.
Basically, a hollowed-out viral shell used as a microscopic delivery truck to carry genetic instructions.
Exactly.
And FOXO1 is the payload inside the truck.
FOXO1 is a vital transcription factor that regulates metabolism.
So how does that help with the suffocation?
Well, when the stem cells are suffocating in that hypoxic environment, their internal organelles begin to fail.
Okay.
The DIAB FOXO1 system actively restores the communication between the mitochondria and the cell's energy factories and the endoplasmic reticulum, which folds the proteins.
It forces the internal cellular machinery to keep running smoothly despite the lack of oxygen.
Yes, it keeps them alive until blood flow is established.
There is also another approach mentioned that uses necrostatin-1 microparticles embedded directly into the encapsulation material.
Yes, that's another crucial piece of the puzzle.
Necrostatin-1 sounds like something that literally stops death.
It halts a very specific type of death called necroptosis.
How is that different from regular cell death?
Unlike apoptosis, which is a clean, programmed cellular suicide, necroptosis is a highly inflammatory cell death triggered by extreme stress, like hypoxia.
Oh, so it's a messy death.
Very messy. When a cell undergoes necroptosis, it ruptures and spills its contents, which triggers a massive immune response.
Which is exactly what we want to avoid in a transplant.
Precisely. Necrostatin-1 chemically blocks the signaling pathway that triggers that rupture.
So it instructs the stem cells to stay alive and remain silent while they wait for the host's blood vessels to finally integrate with the transplant.
Exactly. It buys them time.
We are chemically forcing these cells to survive in a hostile environment. It's truly breathtaking science.
It really is.
But while stem cells are clearly the biological future, millions of people need to manage their blood sugar right now.
Today, every single day.
Right. We are seeing a massive tech revolution stepping into this gap with automated insulin delivery, or AID systems. Devices like Control-IQ plus SETI, the Medtronic 780G, and Omnipod 5 are effectively acting as external robotic pancreases.
These wearable devices create a closed-loop system where a continuous glucose monitor talks to an insulin pump.
And an algorithm decides how much insulin to deliver minute by minute.
Exactly. The Melissa trial is pushing this even further. They are utilizing AI not just to react to current glucose trends, but to offer personalized dose recommendations.
And they automatically estimate the carbohydrates in an unannounced meal, right?
Yes, which takes a massive cognitive load off the patient. What's fascinating here is how the machine learning driving this is shifting.
Yeah, it's shifting from correlation to causality. One of the papers detailed the use of directed acyclic graphs, or DAGs, for causal inference in bolus calculations.
Traditional correlational AI looks at a data set and says, when X happens, Y usually follows. It sees your heart rate spike and your glucose drop, and it might incorrectly learn that elevated heart rates cause low blood sugar.
But human metabolism is far too complex for simple correlations.
Far too complex. A DAG is a mathematical model that maps out the true direction of cause and effect.
So instead of just seeing the heart rate and the glucose, a DAG understands you just stepped on a treadmill with active insulin still in your system from an apple you ate an hour ago.
Yes. It integrates prior medical knowledge to generate a map of causality for your specific body.
That's wild.
It knows the exercise is increasing your insulin sensitivity in real time, while the digestion of the apple is delayed due to the fiber content.
By understanding why the blood sugar is moving, the AI can make significantly safer and more accurate dosing decisions.
Exactly. The algorithms are approaching near perfection.
But the sources highlight a massive bottleneck that has nothing to do with battery life or computational power.
No, it's much more complicated than that.
It is the human brain. To you, the listener, if a black box AI algorithm told you exactly how much insulin you needed to inject a drug that can be lethal if overdosed, would you trust it blindly? Or would you still want to run the math yourself?
That sociological friction is a major hurdle.
Because giving up control is terrifying.
It is. The research shows that while offering financial incentives significantly increases the initial uptake of these autonomous medical AI systems, patients actively and constantly seek human reconfirmation.
So sustained use, the true integration of this technology into daily life, is entirely dependent on trust.
Completely. If an individual has managed their own diabetes for 20 years, they have an internal intuition about their body.
Right, they know what works for them.
If the algorithm suggests a dose that feels counterintuitive, the human instinct is to override the machine.
We want the algorithm to do the heavy lifting of the calculations, but we want the human intuition to act as the final safety net.
That's the delicate balance we're trying to strike.
And this daily grind, this constant friction between relying on native biology versus algorithms and transplanted cells, brings us to the reality of the physiological toll.
It's a lifelong burden.
All of this technology and biological witness protection is incredible, but it forces us to confront a difficult question. What happens to the human body when it spends decades fighting this disease?
The data paints a stark picture of type 1 diabetes as an accelerator of aging.
Which is scary to think about.
For a long time, the focus in T1D care was purely on survival, just preventing severe hypoglycemia or DKA.
But now
That life expectancies have normalized, we are seeing the compounding impact of chronic hyperglycemia and recurrent hypoglycemia over a span of 40 or 50 years.
every time blood sugar drops too low or spikes too high, it causes microscopic cellular damage, particularly to the vascular system.
Yes, and over decades, this damage accumulates. It predisposes individuals with T1D to geriatric syndromes much earlier than the general population.
Like what kind of syndromes?
We are tracking increased premature rates of frailty, sarcopenia, which is the loss of muscle mass and function, and cognitive decline.
The most alarming part of this research is that these impacts are not just waiting for patients in their 70s.
No, they are measurable in youth.
There is a deeply concerning study here utilizing the trabecular bone score in children and adolescents with T1D.
The trabecular bone score goes beyond standard bone density scans. It measures the microarchitectural texture of the bone.
So quality over just quantity.
Exactly. You can have thick bone, but if the internal scaffolding, the trabeculae, is brittle and disorganized, the bone is weak.
And the study found that this score unmasks early skeletal fragility in youth with T1D, right?
Yes, their bones are structurally aging faster than their healthy peers.
We see the same acceleration in cardiovascular health, too. Another paper points out the flaw in relying solely on body mass index to assess cardiovascular risk in youth with T1D.
BMI tells you nothing about how adiposity is distributed in the body.
Or how visceral fat is actively driving inflammation and interacting with the autonomic nervous system to cause early cardiovascular autonomic neuropathy.
Which is why we cannot view the daily management of T1D in a vacuum. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it all ties together.
How so?
Well, optimizing your time in range today using a sophisticated DAG-driven aid system is not just about avoiding a high blood sugar tomorrow.
It is directly translating to the prevention of that accelerated aging decades down the line.
Exactly. Delaying the onset of the disease by even a few years with immunotherapies like teplizumab means years of preserved bone architecture.
It means years of protected vascular health.
The narrative of T1D research has evolved from simple survival to the absolute preservation of the whole self.
So early screening buys time.
Immunotherapy buys runway.
And AI manages the daily physiological toll, preserving cellular integrity while we perfect the biomaterials needed to keep stem cells alive in their safe houses.
That's the complete picture.
When you step back and look at the sheer scale of this biological and technological arms race, with AI predicting our metabolic futures, stem cells being engineered to replace a broken pancreas, and monoclonal antibodies successfully reprogramming our immune responses, it leaves us with a truly provocative thought for you to mull over.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder.
Could we right now be the last generation that views type 1 diabetes as a lifelong chronic management burden rather than a fully curable condition? Remember to like and subscribe, follow the link in the channel description to buy me a coffee, and thank you for listening.